Hello, and welcome to the I Have No Idea live stream roundtable on neurodiversity and mental health. I'm Landon Waliza, the creative administrator for OnKey Performance Hub, who is presenting I Have No Idea in conjunction with Listen to This and In the Headlights Productions. Tonight, before we start, I just wanted to thank our sponsors and our funders. That's Canada Council for the Arts, Creative Saskatchewan, the City of Regina, the University of Regina, MyTax, Rebel Media and Marketing, and all of the amazing sponsors that are working with us on these individual shows this season. Tonight, this roundtable will be hosted by community activist, disability advocate, and artist Carla Harris. Carla, you can take it away.
Thank you, Landon. I am so excited to have the opportunity to host this panel discussion today on neurodiversity and mental health. We're gonna go around, do some introductions because you're our playwright. You're the person who's put this whole project together. This is, suddenly I can't find because I'm ADHD. Oh, Nathan Coppins.
Nathan Coppins, yeah.
Coppins? Oh, I'll probably forget that next time too.
That's okay.
But Nathan, you've worked in everything from like puppeteering to clown work and all kinds of creative stuff, hey?
Yeah.
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 And how? Here's what I'm gonna, before I forget. How did you find out? Because I love your title. I Have No Idea. This is definitely, I think, a lot of disabled and people with mental health and mental illness experiences where you really grow up not knowing. So I'm curious, how did you figure out that you had a health condition?
I probably started a few years ago when some friends of mine were flagging, this is pretty similar to something that I've been diagnosed with recently, and so is this one. That coupled with the fact that my life was a mess was probably it. But no, it was other friends that had, a lot of women that were late diagnosis, women who are non-binary, and that were late diagnosis people that started going hey, I think this is a thing, you're struggling. And I was let's learn about that. That makes more sense. For ADHD, probably anxiety and some, and other stuff too. So, yeah.
That sounds pretty familiar.
Yeah.
I'm going to move along next to our next guest is Roxy Lenton, who I'm really excited actually. Make sure you go on to the Creative City Center's podcast series that's for artists from every discipline who are kind of coming together and having very detailed conversations about their own mental health experience. Roxy, our outside the spotlight guest, how did you figure out that you had conditions to?
It was kind of a long process, at least to get a lot of them figured out. But I was about 19 when I knew that something was wrong, and started trying to get help. And then it was depression was first, and then it was depression and anxiety. And years later, OCD got added on. And also at one point they were like, you're bipolar, and then they were like, no, you're not. It kept changing, because basically a lot of the doctors were saying I have no idea. So it's been a journey over time, but it's interesting.
It is so interesting. Probably the most interesting person that I've known in a long time is actually Tracy Foster. You've been such a huge trailblazer for disabled voices to really step forward in this community and proudly embody our experience on stages. And so I'm gonna cry. But I'm really grateful for the space that you've made and the work that you do in making sure the way that we rehearse and the company that you work with can be people from every mental and physical and type of barrier and disability and condition that we deal with. And so I think I've probably heard a little bit about it before, but Tracy, you have such a knowledge. How did you figure out Because I feel like it's not even a matter for you about I have no idea on The Voice, but like the breadth of where that would take you and how you could utilize that knowledge.
Oh, okay. How did I figure it out? I think in like to summarize it, I figured it out from continually bumping into really extraordinary barriers, while simultaneously finding my way out of this community and into communities where there were mentors and teachers who wouldn't identify as CRIP leaders, but they knew how to hold space for me to be who I was and how I was in my body. So I think that's really where it started, not only for the work that I'm doing within our wonderful community now, presently in Saskatchewan, but also for my own mental health journey. I started to be able to embrace my differences and really work past this continued suggestions that I don't let anybody know that I have mental health issues.
Yeah, I think I saw a few heads nod here. That's a very resonant moment, right? Like both embodying it and sharing it and discussing it. That's huge. Thank you. I want to make sure Leroy is from CMHA, and we're so glad to have you here with us today. Did you want to introduce yourself? I'm not quite the same. I'm not going to ask you about how you wrote a play or
Yeah, I'm Leroy at Canadian Mental Health's Regina branch. So for those who are familiar with the city, we have a drop-in center, so we're supporting adults with mental health and addictions challenges. So it's mental health on the whole spectrum. So we're trying to play our part in reducing the stigma. And I was at a meeting this morning where I'm encouraging people. I'm saying it's okay to talk about mental health. We'll talk about physical health, but for some reason we don't want to say, this is where I'm at, or these are my struggles. Whether it's ADHD, whether it's depression and anxiety, or anywhere in between, because of the stigma that goes with it, and that you're just not good enough. And that's the big challenge. And I think it's so important to have a conversation, such as this, around topics of mental health, because we all have mental health.
Yes, absolutely.
Physical health.
Yeah.
And it's always a practice, right? It's never complete.
Nope.
It's never one, there's no happily ever after. There's no constant, build the road and it's done. Like there is eternal, what do we call that? Like the infrastructure has to be always developing and growing. It's never complete and we're all in the process.
It's recovery.
Absolutely.
And it's a journey.
And growth.
And so as you go along the recovery journey, some days are better than others, and you go backwards and then you go forward. Hey, we all have good days. And that's to embrace, to learn from, move forward, and we're going to have a setback, and stuff happens. But what's our attitude, our approach to what has happened? What can we take from it to move forward on recovery?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And the remaining guest that I haven't gotten around to because I talk too much, Crystal. Pleasure to meet you again. Another actor in our community, another person with disabled experience as well. So we've got this incredible. Did you have a specific thing that happened? What you figured out that you have?
A variety of things. Yeah, because I sometimes feel like they're or try to think of them like degrees you have after your name, just so that I get excited.
I like it.
I
so educated.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very qualified. I think the first time I got diagnosed with anything was a kind of a rare experience, actually, of my medical doctor tying in that there was some mental health stuff happening, which based on the physical symptoms I was having, which is, I don't know that I've ever actually had that since then. But so I had been moving at Gwen University, and they just a psychiatrist called me and said, your doctor recommended that you come to me, and I was like, fantastic. I was already well on board with wanting that. But in terms of and so I got diagnosed with some anxiety and depression and stuff then, but ADHD was later in the process, and I didn't mean to say this, but I had no idea. Truly.
Keep saying it, they'll buy tickets.
We'll make a hashtag. Don't I have no idea.
But truly, it wasn't even on my radar. There was no, I'd never heard of a girl or female presenting person having ADHD, and I loved school. Even though I really struggled at exams, and my teachers, at certain kinds of exams particularly, my teachers would be like, we're confused, and I was like, so am I, and then we'd carry on. And then I think a big part of it too is that it turned out after I got diagnosed that basically everyone in my family except for my mom has it, and we just called it the harder brain, which is my last name. Mm-hmm. So I ended up, it was kind of a blessing because I grew up with my dad really expecting that this would be part of our lives, and like immediately being like, you're going to forget everything all the time, write everything down. Here's all the ways to remember things. You're always going to be like, you're going to be late to try and do these things. So in a way, I had a unique experience of kind of feeling like I belonged by being that way, at least in my family, not in the greater world necessarily, but that was kind of nice. But I was, I think, 31, and my partner at the time, whose mother's a doctor, called me. We were living across this, in different countries at the time, and he was like, just before you go, hun, me and my mom think you might have ADHD. I was like, what? Why? I had really no feeling about it. Like, I was just like, that doesn't seem, I'm very tired. I barely move. I don't see how that would be possible. But then I learned more about it and was like, it was absolutely life-changing. And it took about 3 years and 3 countries, actually, to get diagnosed. But
wow. That's a challenge in its own, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I know me, and I get too excited about conversations, so I'm going to make sure that I cover, because you are you're the one that wrote this play.
I am.
Tell me a little bit about how you explored that. What was so interesting for you? Is this what you wanted to tell, or did it kind of?
Oh no, it's what I wanted to. The stories have been. The stories have been a little bit like the character stories have, some of them have turned out differently, and that's partly a result of, how the writing has evolved and the result of input from like Tracy and other, Crystal and other workshops and stuff. I found it really difficult, like you said earlier. Yeah, I worked as an actor, and I still do, and a puppeteer and musician and all this stuff. And all the advice that you get in the middle of Canada is, if you want more work, create it. And then it was like, okay, but I don't have any stories. Like, why am I don't want to take up space that isn't, like, honestly, it was like, nobody needs to hear a story from this, body, right, or this person, right? So, but then it was like, okay, but this is a unique thing, which is less unique than we all think it is.
Yeah.
But a late diagnosis, and so many people slip through the cracks. And then I was reading, there's an excellent book series. I love it. It might be slightly outdated, but it's called The Rosie Project. And there's I've told you, and there's a character, and it's from the point of view of someone who has mental health challenges and doesn't know they have them. and it's very, very funny. But I had read that, and then I was like, as I was getting, it was a years-long process to get diagnosed and to get help, and like that's explored partly through the play, through a couple of characters. But it was, I was like, I'm tired of watching these shows where like ADHD is presented as just the crazy, stupid, and there, there we're done. And like, cause that's not what it is, but there are parts of it that are really funny, right? Like, or you just say things that are funny, or funny stories happen, and it can be a real struggle, but it's also like, some of that struggle is because of the brain, some of it is because of a response on the part of other people, or whatever systems to the brain, and then some of it is just like, this is ridiculous. If I were to film my life, like how many times do I go back into the kitchen to get the thing I forgot in the kitchen? And like, or just little things that, or big things that have an impact. And so this process was like, no, I can write this. Like, but then I wanted to explore other people's experiences with ADHD and mental health broadly. So I asked people, and they should be named in the program, but I asked people like that I knew and that I didn't, and got a pretty good response from people who were like, yeah, I want to tell you my stories. So, they sat down with me and talked, and then like some of it was really like, you're crying because it's, some of it was crying with laughter, some of it not.
Yeah.
And because I didn't want to frame like just my experience. And then so I got like 4 people, in different, different people, different genders, like everything in the play. And it was like, it was startling. The people that had helped me most, up until I finally did get like a diagnosis after a few years of trying to navigate the system, were people that have been, failed by the system. So like Crystal, where it's like, yeah, you didn't know other girls or other women or female presenting that had it. And I was like, well, you did.
Right, totally.
But,
Yeah.
Yes.
That is one of those things that I really love about this play, and why I'm really excited, because I think actually Tracy probably would relate to it, but the idea of telling a story where, whether you've experienced it or not, so whether you have a disability or not, the important parts of the story are the frustration, the laugh, the cry, the everything, and that is human experience, period.
Yeah.
So where it comes from, like an audience who doesn't have conditions like mine or any of these, will see my story and will totally get the horrible cringe I did at that moment. And it doesn't matter if it's in a doctor's office instead of a school, instead of it's the human just struggle all the way through. And before I miss the chance, I wanted to ask you about what you feel, Tracy, that you and Listen to This, the company, which is disabled artists, led by disabled artists, on projects that are written by our own community, and also a board. I get to be on a board with other disabled folks instead of being that. What got you going on that? What about Listen to This do you want to share?
Well, what got me going on that was I co-produced a project in 2006 and brought in a play, a salon play that was presented, and with that artist and a close friend of mine and an artist who was producing and directing that, we taught a 4-day voice workshop for the disabled community, and there was such a massive response. There were 24 people there, and those 24 people stayed for the 4 days and could see the kind of hunger for the invitation to creatively collaborate, explore, and express. So from that 4 days, I was invited through South Saskatchewan Independent Living Centre to do, it's a bit of tongue-tied, to do numerous workshops over the next couple of years. And as that was happening, we had sort of a magic number. We still continued to have 24 people in almost everything that we did, like whether it was an hour, a day, or 4 months. And so at the 4 month period, a mask and voice workshop that was extraordinarily amazing. That was in 2008. Commonweal Community Arts came in and asked me if I would consider being artist in residence. So I started a residency, which really quickly, within a year, we had formed a group called Listen to This Voice. And then Listen to This Voice started doing things in the community, a little bit in Moose Jaw and Saskatoon, but mostly Regina-centric. And then we won't go into the story of the demise of that, but that crashed after 4 years. And the community themselves held it while I was very ill from burnout in doing this. And then we came back together when I could, and we formed the nonprofit. And from then, quite quickly, to me teaching a class at the University of Regina, co-teaching a class at the University of Regina with Dr. Kathleen Irwin. This class was put together, it's called Devising Inclusive Theatre. It was put together as a response to some pretty incredibly inappropriate things that had happened to two particular students who were disabled, being told that they couldn't create theatre and they were in the wrong work and other things. And so I was invited in to hold this class with Kathleen because nobody really knew what to do. I did the class, but like, what do we do with it? And as it turned out, just the way life is, the 7 artists and students that came together happened to have incredible alchemy, and we formed a theater company. Well, in part thanks to you, because we did the theater project, showed it, and you said I think we were having a goodbye dinner in a way, and you came in and said, would you like to present this at the Cathedral Village Arts Festival?
I was so excited.
Okay. And we've never turned back, so we've never looked back. And so now we have the theater company, and the theater company has done some touring in Saskatchewan and written 3 different plays, and now we're starting to do smaller plays, like 1 or 2 handers. And then we've also recently, through one of the plays, we decided to have live music. And through that, now we've got a music ensemble who is working with us and beginning to tour. We'll be going to L'Orange in May. I forget where the other place is, but anyway, so that's happening. And yeah, that's sort of how it happened. By what one of my therapists would say is you're on a journey of the heart, which I didn't quite like. I mean, I didn't mind it, but I also analyze a lot, so I was like, well, I'm not quite sure if on page 7 I don't know if that's how I understand it, but anyways, he was like, I think you think that the journey of the heart is easy. No, it's like the worst, like the hardest journey you're going to choose to go on, because you're responding to need as you see it, and you're letting that sort of take you. And within the container of the disabled community and the disabled experience, I have found my way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's just beautiful, and so resonates, right? Like finding a place where you find your voice. Actually, I wanted to ask you on the same kind of side there, Roxy, because you have written music for a long time, and you've been a performer, and you've done all kinds of in the music field. But I am truly recommending this Outside the Spotlight podcast because it is beautiful to see the conversations about the larger mental health contribution of our art that we do. I am so curious where you connected with that in your art.
Yeah, I mean, it was something like, that's a tough thing. Like for me, I can't, like the mental health struggles that I've had and everything, they're such a part of me that I've never been able to separate them out, which I mean, I don't think you're supposed to, it's just kind of part of who you are. But, so I just, it wasn't really with any type of effort. It was just like, writing, or I wouldn't sometimes even be writing. I'd just be like, I feel these really strong emotions. What do I do? And then I would like go to my piano and I'd be like, nah, and like trying to like write things to get these emotions out. And to me, it was a huge thing to be able to write. Like I have so many songs that I'll probably never even share, but they were very therapeutic to write them, and to meet other people in the music community and just the arts community in general who have also had that similar experience of using art to deal with the things they're going through. It has been really inspiring to find that. And one of the things I really love about Outside the Spotlight, that podcast, is like the conversations of like that you don't necessarily have, because you don't necessarily dig deep with people. You're not like usually meeting artists and being like, should we speak for an hour about all of our deep, dark-seated issues? Like, so it's interesting to.
You want to hear that? You can
doesn't
stream
always
my
happen,
album.
though. So it's like it's neat to like be able to actually kind of go a little bit deeper and discover things that you might not have known about someone else and their experience and how they use art. And I love whenever people are open about their struggles with mental health. I've always found that makes me feel like less crazy, basically, and like more like confident in the fact that yes, these are medical conditions that I'm dealing with. And like, you know, you had brought up about the stigma. It's such a challenging thing because people have no issues if it's something like physical. A lot of stuff, it's like people just are like, oh, okay, yeah. But there was a different response when I started dealing with stuff of like dealing with things. But whenever I met other people who were open about it, that always inspired me to be like, okay, that makes me feel more comfortable in myself. And then that made me want to be open about it because I wasn't at the beginning, but I have been for a number of years now. And part of that is on purpose because I still find it terrifying to talk about, but I feel like it's so important to talk about so that it gets more commonplace for people to be able to just feel like I can talk about this. So
Absolutely. Yeah. That's kind of a thing that I love about it being in the art, right? Like, where's a more interesting way to explore it that other people can observe where you're not in a conflict to go through it. And so you can really like feel that resonating in a different way. Well, now I'm just thinking to myself, but before
But it's out loud.
ADHD.
There's nowhere better for it to be.
That's right. Before, because you only had a chance to slip in a little later, and thank you for joining us. I forget your name though because I didn't write it down.
it's Sydney.
Sydney, yes. So Sydney, you have a great opportunity right now where you're working with Listen to This. Do you want to like just tell us a little bit about what it's like to come and work with these folks every day?
Yeah. Okay, for me it's kind of like healing in a way, just because like in a lot of spaces it can feel like you have to put on a front or you have to be a certain way or meet these expectations, and like when parts of my ADHD or my other disabilities come forward, in those moments I feel like I have to like fight a lot, fight for it. But here it's like I can come in and I can say like we literally sometimes it's like you come in, you can cry or you can say like I'm having a bad day, like I can't really do much outside of work, or you can say yeah I'm having a great day. Like it's just you can just actually come in and just be where you're at and bring the art forward from where you're at. So that's just been really amazing to observe like these two and seeing how that impacts the acting, and just I'm also absorbing it and learning so much and just feeling safe. Feeling amazing.
That is lovely. Yeah. I feel like I see a few nodding heads here.
I mean, it's like piggyback, like there's so much in theatrical, maybe filmic, but I work more in like theater, and then like I haven't gotten into the music industry. I've like I've played in the context of theater shows or writing songs, but like not as heavily into that side of the arts industry. But there's such a thing in like theater, like you just go. You're a product. You have 2 weeks to rehearse, 1 week tech. Boom, lights up, 2 weeks later, you're done, and hopefully by then you found what the show is. So, you know, and like this process, which has been like, I mean, the script is that, but like it's also because of Tracy and the other people that we have, you know, in the room that are like, we had a bit more time, but it's taking care to go like, if you don't have artists whose health is prioritized, the art's gonna suffer too. So why are we creating it that way? Like, it's fundamentally stupid, you know? Like, hire me, please. But it is, it's a barrier, and
It's a barrier, and it's failing to bring stories like yours.
Well, and when I've said, like, I've worked with directors who have understood that without understanding it, right? Like, and they're just the way that they work sometimes is, you know, supportive of that. But there are so many that aren't, or individual directors, or companies, or, you know, the whole system of the way the process works of getting a job and all this is fundamentally flawed. So. Right, like,
that gives me so much anxiety. Like I don't have anything to do with auditions or like I'm like, oh my god.
I know.
It's such
scary.
it's so flawed. Or like, you know, the everything you have to do that isn't your art, right?
Yes.
And
Such a total.
And then how you put yourself through the ringer, and your mental health and your physical health and all aspects of your health suffer.
Well, and that's why I just really love being able to. It was such an honor to get to come and sit for your rehearsal for a day, because seeing the rehearsal open with a discussion about where we are physically at in this moment and allowing us to come to the table, even if we're not in our best on that day, that you don't have to like show up. I know I went to music school. Yeah. I had that like audition world around me, and where you hide your vulnerabilities to prove that you are. And by seeing how your rehearsal went for the whole day, I went home feeling like that had been therapy. That is never how like rehearsal day felt for me in my program. And so it's just beautiful to see, because I feel like these are the things that we're not just looking for ourselves, right? Like by having a more inclusive community engagement where somebody, you know, who needs different amounts of time for rehearsal, or who needs consideration on a difficult day, things like that, that we have that space laid out for everyone, and not strictly for a person who has a card that says I have a disability. Like we want this opportunity for a single parent that wants to do a play, that wants to write a play and be in their play. We want this for every people that have family losses, like every kind of thing. That is, art can adapt, and we do not need to operate it in that capitalist way. And the first time I really saw that was with this company. So it's been such an honor to chat with you folks tonight. And I'm gonna not even look at Tracy again. But I will take a moment to mention, so we, most of these people are a part of the I Have No Idea show with On Cue. So go take a look. There's actually other shows that are still coming up this season, and there's another show, Night Sweats by Brad McDougall, who is from Regina as well. So this runs from February 17th until the 26th. You can buy your tickets online. Check it out. I really recommend. It's going to be great, and I'm just honored to have the chance to come and observe for a bit and talk a lot, because I love that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Marla. That was great. And thank you for creating the space for us to not only share, but actually highlight the real need for communities, period, full stop, to begin to embrace creation as care.
Yes.
Because for too long, and still today, there is a stigma, if you can believe this, around art actually acting in a therapeutic manner.
Yeah.
And that is, I mean,
so
to understand it is extraordinarily difficult, always has been. But today, in today's world, I think there are many people like ourselves saying we unapologetically
Yes.
understand the therapeutic nature of what we're doing and embrace it. And if in fact it works to our benefit and to the benefit of our mental health, why would it be viewed as a negative thing?
Yeah.
It's actually impossible to dissect, and I analyze the shit out of many things actually. So I really thank you and Landon and everybody else and this team. I mean, we're learning so much. I feel like there's a possible, research project or book or documentary on the way, because it's proving to be something in a very sort of solidified way that I believe could speak in a very loud and proud way to the naysayers.
Absolutely.
And more importantly, support the folks that understand it's out there but don't know what way to turn or which way to do, where to start. So,
Yeah, and
thank
like
you.
every one of us who went through probably a period of life where we were experiencing mental illness and we're never going to say it, right? We've got to, like, things like having it present and shared in public art spaces and having it supported by our funding programs and by having it celebrated as the art it is and the healing it is, that combination, I absolutely agree.
Well, and also sorry.
No, do it.
Just, I think we're in a time where we're starting to have conversations. Every audition call, we see a lot of, like, it's really important to us that we're helping support any kind of othering situation. And I believe those are by and large put out with good intention and with hope. But I think there's a big lack of knowing what would that actually look like, both for the people that need it and the people that are offering it. And so what I'm noticing as we begin these conversations, which is absolutely the first step, so that's great. We're starting to speak about it in the room, in other projects and communities. But what I really love and hadn't fully clocked or put together until this project was being in the condition in the room. So, like, it's one thing for me to come into the room and be like, I have ADHD, I have CFS, I've got fibromyalgia, and then I just do the same work. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And whatever, go to the bathroom and then struggle and then come back, or whatever it happens to be, go cry somewhere or freak out or can't. So often I'm like, I literally can't make dinner or walk in the evenings because I can't rehearse in the day. But being in the mess of it in the room, it really pulls it out of that feeling of tokenism or I just think it's a really important next step, and it is hard to know totally how to do that or what that even looks like. I think I've been presented probably with that opportunity, but I haven't even known how. Because it's immensely vulnerable, to be in, and I really feel like I'm learning how to do that and how to be in this, and it's showing up every day. I mean, the conditions are showing up every day in this work all the time, and realizing that I can still get the work done and it can still happen, and I'm way less taxed, like way less, because you're not masking all the time.
Yes.
It's just wildly different. So it's really, I really agree that this could be a great opportunity to start offering some knowledge to the rest of the companies that are wanting to do something and not really sure what the next step would be.
Yeah, and as a total, like, also MBA geek, because ADHD go do different things. But I think that examples like Listen to This, where we've got the administrators, we've got the board, we've got disabled lived experience in every one of the parts of the planning, that, and in staff roles, in wherever, that is where things can really start to show up. So if I was suggesting anything to any like organizations in the world that are looking to grow in these ways, I think that's probably going to be the bigger, and having not one person doing it all on their own, right?
Yeah.
If you're the one rep, it's pretty hard.
Yeah.
But if we share these things and we discuss these things without shame, it's an incredible growth.
Yeah.
I just want to come in on something there. You're talking about lived experience.
Yeah.
Right. I want to talk about living experience.
Ooh.
Because, lived is giving me almost a past tense.
You're right.
Yeah.
I'm working with people in mental health.
Yes.
People on a day-by-day basis. They're coming and doing arts and crafts. They are painting. We had a music theatre group. But it's living experience. It's a day-by-day, moment-by moment. It's not a past tense.
Yeah.
True.
So, yes, it's important to have people with lived experience. But I go back to the journey. We're not there.
No.
And it ties in with my other belief is that of acceptance. That's where you were going. With the acceptance of who you are, where you are, when you are, how you show up. I'm accepting of who you are.
Yeah.
Because you are living that experience. And that for me is so important. And that's what we are trying to do with our membership. When you show up at the door, it's however you are. We accept you. And that's what it's about. It's that living experience. So it's an ongoing thing. Because none of us have arrived. So it's living experience. And that I think is so important.
And every one of them, right? The living experience now, the one in an hour, the one, because they can all be very different.
That's it. So I think that's so important. And I was hearing you talk of acceptance. But I think it's lived experience you touched on, but it's more than that. And I think that is so important as it impacts mental health, individually, but also in a family, maybe on a broader level, in the community you're talking about, the arts community, but community at large. It's acceptance of who people are, where they are, and they're living an experience. And I'm there in my organization to go with that person on their journey. I'm not here to tell you how to live your journey. That's your journey. But I'm here to support you in ways that you're wanting to go. Not me tell you where to go. Because otherwise, I'm living through you.
That's what theater's for. After the show, I Have No Idea runs February 17th to 26th. Go to the On Cue website and get your tickets. Yes. Thank you all. This was really lovely. Thank you. It's a real honor.
Thank you.
There's an ASL show on the 21st.
There is an ASL show.
Wow.
Thank you. ASL show is going to be on the 21st, and it's all at the university location.
It's at the Shoebox at the Shoebox Theater at the William Riddell Center at the U of R campus.
And it will be surtitled in English on February 22nd.
Yes, and surtitles on the
7:30.
Ella,
surtitles.
our stage manager, the only one in the room that doesn't have ADHD almost, is over there keeping everything going. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, folks. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. I love that flipping perspective.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Fantastic.
Thank you for that. That was a really nice.
I've never heard
That's such
anyone
a